Hi, I'm Christine Jacobson, Associate Curator of Modern Books and Manuscripts here at Houghton Library, and one of the people here who stewards our Slavic collections. When I was a graduate student over a decade ago, I was really interested in Ukraine and traveled through the region to do research for my master's thesis. So I have a particular interest in our Ukrainian collections, which I have to say are really rich and also significant because they evince the very long history of Ukraine's cultural, linguistic, political, and ethnic identity. We were very lucky to receive a gift from First Lady Olena Zelenska in 2024 when she visited Harvard of 3 books which were rescued from the Faktor Druk warehouse. Faktor Druk is one of the largest publishers in Ukraine, and this warehouse was in Kharkiv and was struck by a missile in May of 2024. One is a children's book by Sashko Dermanskyi. Another is this autobiography by Pavlo Belianskyi. And then we have a novel that has been translated from the English to Ukrainian by Heather Gudenkauf. Really pleased that these items could come to the collection here at Harvard. I think that they are really powerful artifactual evidence of the war that continues to be ongoing. And I have to say I was uncertain of whether or not we would be able to make them available to the public when I heard, the state that they had arrived in. But I am so grateful to my colleagues at Weissman Preservation, including Katherine, for their work, not only preserving these books, but also housing them in such a way that we can make them available. I was able to use them in a class this morning. We had a visit from Ukrainian high school students, and they all instantly recognized the children's book, and they expressed a lot of gratitude to Harvard for preserving this work, especially in a time when publishing in Ukraine is diminished as a result of the war.
My name is Katherine Beaty, and I'm a rare book conservator at Weissman Preservation Center, Harvard Library's Special Collections Conservation Lab. When these 3 books came to the Conservation Lab, they were wrapped in tissue paper and in a small cardboard box in the way that they were carried over from Ukraine. The smoky odor was very pervasive as soon as we opened the box, and so that needed to be addressed first before they could go into storage, or certainly before anyone would examine them in the reading room. In order to do that, we put the books into the fume hood with microchamber paper, which would help to extract the odors slowly over time. After several months of exchanging the microchamber paper in the fume hood, the books, then the smell, if you get very close, you can still smell a little bit of smoke, but it's not overwhelming you as you get close. For objects like these, since they are witnesses to the atrocities of war, we do very little to them. We actually want to preserve them as artifacts, especially this one in the center. You can see has a lot of charred bits and crumbs and debris on the surface, as well as this one along the bottom edge. And so my efforts mainly were just to keep it intact as it is as much as possible, creating some kind of housing, which is what conservators call fancy boxes, so that someone, if they want to examine this object or if it will go on exhibit, can handle it safely without disturbing the charred debris as much as possible. So this is how you would encounter the books if you were in the reading room. So the first thing before we open the boxes, we're going to check out the labeling here. We have fragile, store and transport flat, restricted, consult curatorial staff. So this means this object is not going to be served to anyone in the reading room before a curator gives permission. Keep level, again, that's just telling us to keep it flat as we're opening it. And do not remove the box without curatorial approval. Okay, so I've looked at all the labels, and here we have some small thumbnail images of the 3 books inside. This is just to give people a reference point if they're searching for a particular item. If they know this is not what they're looking for, then this leaves this fragile item undisturbed unnecessarily. So I'm going to open the box lid here. Okay, and here are the 3 books inside. We have the one larger book here, and one book here, and the other one is below that. So here I'm just going to open the front of the box so I can slide these books out. Okay, let's set this aside. Here's the other book. Set that aside. We'll come back to it later. And now we have this larger book that is more fragile. One thing you'll notice is that there's a window cut in the top of this box. This is not typical, but because this object is so fragile, having the window there allows the person to see, one, how fragile it is, and also to observe what is going on with the object when they're removing it from the box. So I'm going to take this secondary box out of the larger box. I'm going to get rid of that. Now, again, we have more labeling: fragile, store, and transport flat, and pull. So we have a small pull flap here. And again, more instructions. We're going to pull the sled out from the box by the flap. Okay. And now, if we want to remove the book, handle the tray. So this tray was built to allow one to handle this really fragile book without touching its edges. As you can see, the edges here are quite vulnerable. A few pieces have fallen off. That is to be expected with such a fragile object. But this tray allows someone to handle it, to examine each side, but really not need to touch the object at all. If for some reason someone needed to remove it from this tray, there's a small tab here which allows the platform to be lifted from the bottom without touching the book. So I'm going to set that one aside. We can open up the other books. These 2 books are in 4 flap enclosures. So I'll just open the tongue here. Open 1, 2, 3, 4 flaps, and we can access the book. Here's the other object. Again, we have a small image, so you can know instantly which book you are opening up first. Here we go. This book has a fair amount of char along one edge, but it does not have the active flaking as the other book. Okay, so I'm now done looking at the books. I'm going to put them back in. So I'm going to bring this sled back out. Bring the book on its tray. Going to line that up. And now, carefully slide the sled back into the box. This is so I can really watch what's going on. Everything looks good. There we go. This small book will go next to it here. This book is slightly larger and it will fit on top.